Give yourself the bit permission to be curious about what lights you up.
Yeah.
Like, just be curious about that, and then make decisions from that space.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not here to do it all like we've been taught to do. I mean, there's definitely great ways, and there's definitely examples and ways of doing things. But what I hope to encourage people to do is, what is it going to take to make your light shine just a little brighter? And then the next day, what does it take to shine a little brighter?
Hello and welcome. This is Brian Delaney with Unlock Potential, where we get together with top experts in their field who have simple, profound advice to help you and I live better lives, to be able to be more fit to serve the people around us and answer that question, the question that nags within all of us: how good can I be and how great can I make it for people around me? Hello and welcome back to Unlock Potential. I'm Brian Delaney. I'm here with Meredith Ellison. She is a co-founder of Quility. She is a co-creator of Ripple and an all-around awesome human being. She has the ability to drive hope, inspiration, and self-belief in other people like few I've found. So I'm excited for you to join me and see what I see and learn from her today with me. Well, first and foremost, welcome.
Thank you.
It's cool.
Very honored to be here.
I'm honored to have you here. I've gotten to know you and certainly grow in business with you and Brandon over the years. Mm-hmm. Watching the kids grow up, seeing you in all of your different roles as mother, friend, great supporter, co-founder, organizational badass, just somebody who gets to really influence a lot of people, and not only the people, but how people move and think in groups, and which I think is a really special thing. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of organizations out there who signal toward that. They'll virtue signal and they'll say, "Oh, we care about people," and it's like, but practically caring for people is a lot more of a challenge. Yeah. So why do you think, whether it's a business owner, a salesperson, whether they're a spouse or a single parent, child, whatever somebody's role is out in community, why do you think culture is so important and a really vital part of a growing family and a better society?
Wow. Great first question.
We try to open up and go deep. I don't like.
Let's just go there. Let's just go.
I don't like having to fast forward to the last few minutes to get the good stuff. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's important also to just name. There's always culture.
Yeah. You're
always in a culture.
Okay.
Right, and so no matter what you're doing it with, a culture exists, and I think what I hope to instill in myself, and then hopefully create somewhat of inspiration to others, is kind of taking your power back over your own culture, and being very intentional with it. And so that's kind of what Ripple has been about, is kind of letting people understand, at the end of the day, Brandon and I have talked about this over the years, one day we're going to be 95 years old, and we're going to be sitting on our rocking chairs, and we're going to ask, that what mattered? What mattered? And you can really boil it down to two things. It's the relationships you create and how you show up in those. And so for culture, I think it's about being intentional and creating a space and creating a responsibility of taking ownership in how you show up to that place. So I get passionate about it, I get excited about it, because it feels like you can reclaim your own power with the culture you're creating. So
yeah, that's and the way you say it, I immediately have another question, because I heard it in the way you said it. This is an outpouring of your own personal journey of naming and reclaiming your own culture inside of you.
Yeah.
What started that?
I think I can I was really fortunate to be born into the family that I was born in. And I have 2 amazing parents, and I have 2 brothers, and there was always a safety there for me to just be me.
Huh.
And maybe I'm not going where you were asking, but
No,
I think,
that's great.
and I had to find that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for a long time, I really kind of I exemplified the culture around me. So I grew up in the South. I grew up in Alabama, and I kind of played that part. I played it well, and I enjoyed it, and there's no hard feelings there.
Yeah.
And then I think moving to Asheville was a big move for me personally, to be able to step out of what kind of was a foregone conclusion, and then finally, who am I? What is my belief systems? What do I believe in? What kind of life do Brandon and I want to create? It's going to look different, and I think that for me, I needed to separate myself and kind of find my own way in that. So it was about going inward, and the foundation was there, and a support system was there to say, I'm going to love you no matter what. You go be you, Meredith.
Yeah.
You go do that. And so that's is a gift that I'll never take for granted. And hopefully, how can we be a part of creating other foundations for people to have that kind of safety net, to believe in themselves enough to grow and lead from that space?
So what would you if you had to name that? Like if your life was a book and that was a chapter, you said moving from what was before you broke the pattern, before you broke the momentum of assumption that was going to be your woman from the southeastern life, that where you put on display everything that everybody would expect. What would that chapter of your life be named? And when you started to really come into your own, what would that one have been named?
That's good, Brian. I've talked about this a lot, but I think I can really boil down everything to kind of one like guiding principle that I feel like I've gone, and it's live by what you trust, not by what you fear. And I think that chapter would have been about fear, not in a scary way, but just in a not trusting who I am, but just in a fear of like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to, I'm a people pleaser from way back, right? Like I like people to like me.
Yeah.
And so, but that was fear driving that.
Okay.
And then stepping into the journey and this, like Brandon, I know y'all talked about that. His is these sliding door moments of us saying, we're going to do it different. But we got to go from what we trust in and who we trust we are and what our path needs to be. And it's going to look different. But I think that has shaped my life more than anything, is just living from that space, because it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to do that. So
yeah, it does. When you start to break free from that, and I'm not done. I'm just in process.
Me neither.
And it's great having the opportunity to be in process with both you and Brandon and so many other great people that we get to be around.
Yeah.
But if you had to give people permission to break one fear, to break that pattern, what would that be? The one that you see, from your perspective as a female leader, from your perspective as someone who's come up and had success, supporting somebody as they're growing an organization, being a part of growing that organization, and growing your own culture in your home with your family, all at the same time. What would you speak into that person? What would you give them permission to break as far as one of those fears?
I mean, I do think it really just goes back to give yourself the big permission to be curious about what lights you up.
Yeah.
Like, just be curious about that, and then make decisions from that space. Because we're not here to do it all like we've been taught to do. I mean, there's definitely great ways, and there's definitely examples and ways of doing things. But what I hope to encourage people to do is what is it going to take to make your light shine just a little brighter? And then the next day, what does it take to shine a little brighter? You know, I was listening to this great podcast. It was, I can't remember now. Oh yeah, it was 2 days ago, but she was talking about the darkness and dark and being in dark spaces and being in dark times. And I think someone advised her that darkness has no power.
Yep.
It's just a space where you haven't turned your light on yet.
Yeah.
And so it's just like we give too much power to things that really don't deserve it, versus just taking back your own power to just like, how can I turn that dimmer switch up a little bit?
Yeah.
And so that's what I would just hope people do more of, is being curious within, because that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see a pattern break? Was it moving? Was it going to school, moving away from home? What meeting Brandon? What was the pattern break for you?
I had several. I mean, it wasn't one just break wide open.
Yeah.
I think the first time I really could go back, I grew up playing basketball. It was my life. Like it was what I did, and my family was all in, and they were at every game, and it was what we did. And my brothers would play every night, and I did travel ball, and it was everything. And I had a coach, and we were a tight family. I mean, you know, team sports. Like, I mean, it's blood, right?
And also having met having met your parents, and
everybody's all in.
Everybody's in.
Everybody's all in, and the community was all in. Our team we were good. We were always in the state championship final. You know, not always, but I mean, we were in there every year. Yeah. But my coach, again, he was for me, but it became a not good. It wasn't healthy for me. It got to a point where it was miserable. He created pretty much a miserable environment. And so going into my senior year, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And again, at that point, it felt huge to do that. And I remember going to my dad, and he was like, well, babe, let's wait till the end of the season. Let's just wait till the end of the season, because you're going into your senior year, you know. And I said, Dad, I'm not. I'm gonna make this decision now, because I can feel. I know I can feel the pain now. And if I wait till summertime, they'll be like, oh, I can just do this again. Yeah. And I think for them but I knew they would support me. Yeah. I knew they would have my back, even though I don't think he agreed that that's what I should do. Now he does. Now he's like, that was huge. But that was the first step, I think, in doing that. And then I think the next step for us big was to come to Asheville, North Carolina. We were in Colorado, and we kind of had a choice. Do we want to go back to Alabama, where all our friends are? Brian and I were not in a great place in our relationship. And I think if we would have moved back, I don't know that we would have made it. If we would have made it, it wouldn't have been the life that we would have both been really excited about. So we took a leap. We came to Asheville, and we started creating the life we wanted. And it was messy, and we made a bunch of mistakes, but it was ours. Yeah. It was ours. That's and it was no one else's. And so I think from there were just other decisions of just having and building confidence to living in what you trust is best for you and your next step. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of assumption that people bring upon themselves. And I love what you said. It's like giving too much power to something that doesn't exist. Yeah. It's like, try to find black on a color spectrum. Why won't you find it? Because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Try to find a tree in the shadow. Yeah. Why won't you find it? Because it doesn't exist. Yeah. The tree doesn't exist in the shadow because that's really good. It's just like it's understanding that darkness is simply an absence of the good things that are there. And a lot of the darkest times in my life, I just wasn't there. Yeah. I just wasn't there, and then finding that way to show up. I love that. That's good. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. When it comes to watching somebody who you care about and partner with them in this journey that I know you've gotten to
watch and partner with and be a big support, an encourager, and somebody who played a vital part in that. As Brandon would talk about you setting his appointments, I'm like, that's the one. That's what I needed, right? That's what makes him do that. Of course, he's doing 5 times the amount I'm doing in a week, but in all of those roles, I assume that I would assume that required you to re-identify yourself, re-identify at least different parts of yourself. What's allowed you to be adaptable in those different seasons and those different roles, so you didn't get stuck into who you were, but you could become who you are? Yeah,
that's such a great question. Because in the early days, I don't know that I was doing what my superpower was. I was doing kind of what needed to get done in that moment because it made sense for that moment. Yeah. With always the hope and the desire that I would be able to step into fully who I am and do what I love to do. So, they say this a lot. I've heard this a lot lately, and especially for women, it's like you can have everything you want, you just might not gonna have it all at the same time. Yeah. And to me, that was just so freeing of we wanted a family. I wanted to go back to work. I had graduated from a master's program of community counseling. It was the first time in my life I felt alive. Like every cell in my body felt clear about what I love to do. And as soon as I graduated, we got pregnant with Addie Ruth, with our first child. And we made the decision at that point that I wouldn't go follow that career, that we would do and start a career together, because we wanted to create a life and a family and business and work together. But then as time moved on, I was able to finally kind of find what I love to do. And that's what I love about this business as well. And I think a lot of businesses are this way. It's just a platform for you to go deeper to kind of that soul's purpose. It's and what a gift that we have is using this platform of symmetry and of Quility to play out our highest purpose. It runs so deep, and it offers such a wide spectrum for people to be able to do that. So I felt very fortunate that we're always kind of taking the next step. And I didn't know that early on, Brian, I'll be real honest. There was years in the beginning that I was angry. Looking back, I didn't know it, but I was frustrated. I had young kids. I think I was dealing, and it was so liberating when we did the work with Giant. Of them saying, well, if you are a nurturer, connector, being a stay-at-home mom was probably horrible for you. And I was like, that was so liberating for me, because I had so much guilt. I was like, I know I'm this nurturing person, but I am about to climb the walls. And so just that kind of work, it was like, okay, well, that wasn't the best thing for me. But I grew up with a mom that stayed at home until all of her kids were in school, and that filled her up. And I think it did more align with her personality, because there was a flow there that I felt like I was not providing. So anyway, it's been a journey. I think we're still on the journey. I'm excited. That's what gets me so excited is who I am now, but who hopefully I will continue to become and learn about myself.
I think that example, it just gives permission for people to really think about their circumstances. And a lot of people, they don't question it. They just feel some sort of way about it. Right.
And it's usually shame or guilt.
Oh, totally. Well, it's like, the guy who doesn't go and work the blue collar factory work. I mean, there was a period in our lives where it was like, there's a lot of honor to putting that in, but then that really became a myth. That wasn't a upward move to the middle class anymore. It was a holding pond for people who were going to stay in the lower to middle class, and it became a struggle environment, right? Yeah. And so things shift, and we have to adapt as people, but that requires us to ask a sincere question: is this right for me? And if so, what do I do about it? And if not,
what do I do about it?
What do I do about it, right? And so I think especially when it comes to these ideas, because people, I know for me, it was like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to do, like, I had this idea of like, I saw my son's mom at the time. She was staying home with my son and my stepdaughter. I was like, oh yeah, that seems great. And at the time I'm working 70 to 80 hours a week. I'm just pushing it single. It was a choice that we had made, which requires a lot of sacrifice. People, like, for anybody to say that's the easier way. Like, I don't know if you just haven't experienced it or whatever it is. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, where the difference is. Yeah. But I stayed home with my son. Mm. And then I went right back to freaking work.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I was like, because I remember the moment where I was like, I'm in over my head, was when I called somebody and I said, yeah, I'll be there in an hour. 4 hours later. It's because it's wintertime. It's Colorado.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It takes an hour just to get the clothes on.
He ate. He got dressed. He had to use the bathroom. And then he was ready to eat again. And then it was time for a nap. And I was like, who wants to do this? Like,
it's unbelievable.
And for people to not just assume a very privileged and difficult position. Mm-hmm. It's like, privileged and difficult positions are not for everyone. And you have to really be engaged in them in order for them to work. Otherwise, they're just going to burn you the hell out of life and of parenting.
Yeah.
You're just going to become the worst kind of thing, which is indifferent.
Yeah.
Indifferent. Like, that's what I saw for me. Mm-hmm. And so, over that time, knowing that you're gearing, like, in retrospect, what were some of the things that you did to keep you from becoming indifferent and getting burned out in an environment that was, now not optimal, at least for you? Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I think I've always kind of had the ability to get to optimism and hope pretty quickly.
Okay.
And so I think in those moments, that kind of felt like despair. I mean, they kind of were like, is this living? Is this what we're fighting for?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to paint it worse, but it was just like, again, a line between abdication and then taking responsibility of changing that. But I think I am wired to just go towards hope and optimism.
Yeah.
And I've always been very intentional about what I'm feeding my brain and what I'm putting in. And so that always has just been clear for me. So what are my resources? Where do I go to? I go to my parents a lot, like help me. I'm struggling here. So to be having people, Brandon, I think so many times if you could just have one or two people that you can completely trust to just like, I need to say where I am, and I need your honest and open and productive feedback to get me out of this brain space. And luckily, I think I've been blessed with more people around me than a lot of people have the opportunity to. So I just had those resources. I'll remember calling my dad when Brandon had left. He was leaving to go sail in, I think, Oregon, or I can't remember where. And I'd been up all night. Addie Ruth had been sick all night. And I was just low. I was just like, I can't do this. And they were away. And I would just call him, and he would be like, babe, you got this. And it just can reset you. So finding what it is that can help you kind of reset. I'm a big encourager to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think a lot of the mistakes that are made in relationships that don't last are hearing that person say that and not being the encourager, but being the victim of that, of when this other person's hurting, being like, well, why do you always have to bring this to me? I'm at work too. And all of a sudden now there was something there, but now there's nothing again. Nothing. Now it's just, it's absent of hope. It's absent. So yeah.
And I think too, people that can remind you of who you are at your best.
Yeah, that's great.
And like, the higher person there and helping you, like, that's there too, and you've got this.
So as a business founder, how do you do that? How do you do that in your in the relationships with the people around you? How do you find yourself reminding people who they are when you see that their performance dips below what is a true expression of them? What are some of the tools that you use to do that?
I mean, I think true and deep connection and just seeing people. You know, I think so many times, especially as leaders, we feel like we have to have all the answers, or that we have to even have words.
Yeah.
But how powerful is it to sit with someone in the dark and even to say, I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm so glad you gave me, and I'm not going anywhere. And I don't have the words to say it, but I can sit here with you. Right? And that's easier said than done, but
100%.
to truly sit with people in their darkness, to remind them it's not dark. We just got to get your light back on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's so good. I can't tell you how many messages I didn't send because I didn't know what to say, and I felt like I should.
Yeah.
And it put me in a position where I gave something to other people that I wouldn't ask for in return, because I would never ask somebody to have all the right words. It's just show up, just show up,
or just say I'm here.
Just say I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm here to listen.
I'm here to listen.
You know, and just I think we forget how powerful that is, because our attention spans, as a result of us engaging in an environment that's ever evolving, and how we assume it's all for our good, right? We don't break that pattern. It's like, is that good? It's just like automatically, oh, it came out from companies, it must be good. I mean, like, of course the cell phone's good. Like, why would I want to fax stuff? Like, you're crazy, right? And so
I think too, asking people, like, Brian, tell me, what does support look like for you right now?
Yeah, great question.
What does support look like?
Yeah.
You know, and then help me, you know, and people know what they need.
Yeah. Yep.
We know what we need. We know what support looks like. So you don't have to have the answers. You just have to have the questions.
Yeah.
Just ask the question. So I think that's what my thoughts would be around that.
Yeah, and I think just being secure enough in ourselves to know it's not about us in those moments, and just to know that it's like, this person is not going to judge me on the perfect words. They couldn't even hear, see, or differentiate.
And most likely, they're not even a place to receive the words.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
So, and what can feel like silence and awkwardness to us, for them can feel like comfort and warmth.
Hey, this is Brian Delaney with Unlock Potential. I've been so thrilled to get to share all of these top tier conversations that have really kind of delivered to you some of the mindsets, some of the tools, some of the things that you need and that they have done in order to get to the next level. We have exclusive content coming on Patreon, and I want to invite you to be a part of that community with us. Not to just learn from us, but to grow with us to the next level, so that you can learn how to show up in your life at your maximum capacity, so that you can make life great for the people around you and you can be your best self.
So when it comes to building a business, silence does do a lot of heavy lifting, right?
It does, yeah.
And so does eye contact, and so do these we call them soft skills, but really human skills. When it comes to being able to create environments where we get the opportunity and we take that opportunity to listen, to be able to be that person who can sense something, but give people the time to come to their own conclusions, right? Can you talk about how you've developed some of those skills and some of the teachers and or resources that have helped you to develop that? Because I know there's a lot of leaders who right now they're working the hardest. They're saying the most, right? They're doing the most. It's always watch me jump through hoops and walk this trapeze. But the hardest workers are not the wealthiest people, right? If that was true, I think country clubs would be full of moms and ditch diggers.
Yes,
they're not
teachers.
Teachers,
yes,
for sure. So knowing that, what were some of those tools? What were some of those tools, teachers, and skills that you've learned to create those environments? I
mean, the work of Daniel Siegelman and emotional intelligence.
Oh yeah.
Has been huge. Daniel Goleman, sorry.
Yep.
Siegelman is positive psychology. Sorry,
Yeah.
I think I confused those two there. But I think we love it. We teach a lot about it. But the self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills are the 5 components of emotional intelligence.
I'm going to ask you to go back and say those one more time because I was like, she's running off a list. I was still at the first one. So
Self-awareness,
yep.
self-regulation,
Okay.
motivation, intrinsic motivation, empathy, and social skills, how we connect. And what I love about emotional intelligence is that when you focus on self-awareness, it automatically grows your empathy.
Okay.
When you grow and you understand what motivates you truly, self-regulation grows.
Okay.
So to me, it was
great.
it's so nice
Yeah.
because it's like a compounding effect.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so, I'm wired a certain way. There's not a lot I can do to change that. But what's so great with emotional intelligence is I feel like we are co-creating with our own evolution.
Yeah. Damn. Somebody write that down as a chapter, as a title of a series of books.
It's so empowering.
Co-creating with our own evolution.
With our own evolution. With the
You'll find that on a short in 2 weeks from now.
But what we've learned in the last 30 years with brain science
Yep.
is we can manipulate our own evolution.
Yeah.
And how empowering is that?
That's so, yeah.
It's the most freeing information out there.
Yeah.
Is that if I don't like my situation, I can work on these tools and I can change, right? I mean, I don't know how much we can change our IQ. I think now there's coming out with things that we can actually, we were born with a certain set of skills and a certain set of wiring.
Yeah.
This is so freeing to know we actually can start creating different neuropathways in our brain
Yep.
that are easier to go to than the ones that we had developed over millions of years.
Yeah.
And how can we help be a part of really changing our brain chemistries to maybe shrink our amygdalas a little bit and grow the prefrontal cortex? I do think it's the key to our evolution.
Yeah. As far as to diminish the power of the limbic response, of that response of something happened, so I have to, right? And the one thing that I've been reading about and learning about is if I say that I have to, I might as well say that I'm not free to.
Right.
Right. And it's like because I've heard somebody recently call it a dashboard, right? Having that dashboard to change how I am in a circumstance, right? Whether it's through breathing, which nobody ever gets taught, right? How to properly breathe in order to achieve certain outcomes, in order to change emotional states.
It's fascinating.
It's crazy. Like, it's like
Just the breath.
because just by breathing, like literally, I didn't know how to breathe until I was probably 25 or 26, and then I was like, and everything, because up to that point, everything else felt like fate.
Right.
It felt like, well, that happened, so I'm supposed to feel this way, and when I feel this way, I'm mean and aggressive toward people who I love, and I create bad experiences all around me because I'm in a bad experience, and that's just the way it goes for them.
Yeah.
It was experience after experience after experience instead of autonomy, freedom, choice, deliberateness, right? Openness to new experiences and new perspectives that were possible.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, again, this question is out there, but it's something I constantly wrestle with is like, where is that line between complacency and truly honoring who I am?
Okay.
Like where is that? That's such a line that moves of like, how do I honor truly who I am and how I'm wired and think versus is that just an excuse for complacency growth?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a good question for all of us to constantly wrestle with is how do I be fully who I am and how I'm wired without giving up autonomy to change and not being complacent of, oh, it's just who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus this is who I am. Like it's so subtle.
Well, it's taking our idea of this is who I am away from a snapshot in time, because none of us live snapshots. If we're fortunate enough to live a long time, whether that be 30 years, 80 years, or 130 years, if we're fortunate enough to live for a long time, what we realize is that most people boil this stuff down to just these snapshots of, well, this is who I am. It's like, probably not, because when you said that was in the future from the past that you were talking about. So probably that could have been true, right? That could have been true in that moment. But who I am is a living, breathing process of growing and aging, because who I am is not separate from this. And I think in the culture that we have today, it's becoming more easy and more attractive and more rewarding for, biochemically, for us to work on building a persona rather than building an actual personality. Like focusing more on what we want other people to see, experience, feel, rather than focusing more on like, this is how I want to experience life, and this is the experience I want to create for others, right? Rather than, this is what I hope you see, and therefore assign me an experience, or assign me some sort of competency because everything that's valuable about me can only be perceived through your eyes, right? And so how do you break that pattern for yourself? Like you said, you were careful about what you put in your head, and I was like, stop telling me what to do. Okay, this is my podcast. You don't get to tell it, because I noticed that about, like, I feel bad and I feel good based on those inputs and based on that novelty addiction, right? Rather than the persistence, it becomes this, what's new? Like, how do people break that? How have you broken that?
Oh goodness.
Or how are you breaking that? I should.
I know. Yeah. Again, I think I don't want to keep repeating, but I have to every day. What I try to do is stay really curious about going inward.
Okay.
And just stay really curious. And for me, 95% of the time, I don't like the voice that's going on in my head. And so I have to stop that. I have to kind of hack that, right? So for me in the mornings, it is key for me to get up and put someone I feel inspired by in my brain. And I have to move my body.
Yep.
And so, because I do think motion breaks down emotion. It metabolizes it. And, and so as I'm metabolizing my emotion, for me, I'm wanting to fill my head with inspiration.
Yep.
So I'm replacing strong emotions with inspiration is what I try to do a lot of days. And so I encourage all people to do that, because I always want to live from an inspired place. And I'll be honest, how I wake up in the morning is not always inspired.
100%.
Right? And so it doesn't mean I have to, it's not about finding it out there. It's about being inspired out there to go inward inside, to lock in and to connect with my own inspiration and what motivates me and how do I want to show up today, because I am a believer in it is in taking responsibility, the energy you bring to a room. It's our responsibility to take charge of that. And how do I want to, when my kids walk down the stairs, how do I want to show up? When I walk into that office, how do I want to show up? When I'm with my husband, how do I want to show up? When I'm with my community, what do they deserve of me? And by giving them my best, it actually is this beautiful cycle that fills me right back up. And so that's where that kind of abundance mentality comes from, is it never will end if we are connecting to that higher part of ourselves. But I can't get there on my own every day. And that's what's so cool about the world we live in, is the access we have. But you have to choose, because there is so much. There is so much that we can get distracted by or feel like is really important. That's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's all just a bunch of BS, you know?
Yeah, it's tuning ourselves to be able to separate the signal from the noise.
Yes.
And being able to get that. And I think a lot of people who may hear, well, she's a co-founder of a major company that's disrupting the industry right now. She's working on bringing organizational health in a way that's disruptive to the way a good old boys system has been done in the past, where it's actually, we're going to look at people, we're going to see them, we're going to hear them, and we're going to use that to drive results in people based on who they are, not just how they're willing to perform.
Yes.
They may look at you and say, well, she must just wake up every single day with a rainbow over her bed, with like somebody must be bringing her a plate of
bringing
food,
my coffee in
bringing
bed.
a coffee, and
Would
just
that be nice?
and just saying, Meredith, you are so awesome today.
I don't know that that's ever happened. I keep trying to get Brandon to give me a cup of coffee, but that's not happened yet. But
We'll find somebody. We'll find.
no, but I mean, it's true. I mean, I think it's so easy to think the person that you're watching or you're inspired by has it easy. I mean, the people I plug into, I think why I love them so much and plug into them is because they're so real.
Yeah.
In honoring the ordinary of their life and the messiness and how hard it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's what it does inspire me, is because of that, you still move forward. You still show up.
Yeah.
You still, make the mistakes. You still try to lead with your heart, even though it's gotten hurt so many times. And so many times it's easier just to not.
For sure.
So many times I've had the conversation of, Meredith, why do we keep doing this?
Yeah.
Because you're going to keep getting hurt. You're going to keep getting hurt.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the magic is knowing you're going to get hurt. And you're going to get your heart broken, and you're going to make mistakes, and people are going to let you down.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to keep showing up because people matter, and I want someone to do that for me because we all deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a complicated, that's like the people in my life and people who I've really admired and respected. They said your life and your relationships are going to be like a messy garden. They're going to be incredibly productive. Each plant is going to feed off another. If somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at, they're going to be like, what happened to the rose? Yeah. Right? Why aren't you in line? Right? Why aren't you, why this thing looks messy. Right? It's an issue, but, and it's productive, and it feeds on itself, and it grows itself. It creates a great culture in and around it. Yeah. It's, that's powerful, and that's what for me gets me fired up is when I see people, because I know they're real. No matter what that veneer is, whatever it is, it's like I know behind that is a person who has wants, needs, hopes, and desires that are just as real as mine. Yes, 100%. Just as real as mine, and they deserve the space to work that crap out.
That's right. We just need an environment to do it.
Yeah, and I don't have. The good news is, while they work their crap out, they don't need to be around me. Like I can put distance. We have boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries. Right? I mean, I think the research shows the most empathetic humans in our world have the strongest boundaries.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times you would think the opposite.
Oh, yeah.
You would think the most empathetic, giving people are always saying yes. And actually, that is the complete opposite. It's because their boundaries are so clear and so strong, they actually have more to give.
Yep. So I know there's people out there, because I at one point in my life was one of them, and I still work to not be that person, but they feel like that doormat. They're doing everything everybody's asking them to, but none of the things that they really want to. And they may be doing some of those things, but they're not doing it with any heart, because they're in that people pleasing state. Yeah. And they're a peacekeeper, not a peacemaker, right? They're in this spot where they're always trying to negotiate peace and trying to make things okay for people around, but things aren't okay in there. Yeah. What would you say to that person?
This hits real home there, Delaney.
I wasn't sure if you would be able to relate to that. I'm
an Enneagram 9. I don't know if you've done any around the work of the Enneagram, but like the peacemaker. Yeah. And so I'm always searching for peace. Like it's kind of it's what's driving me. Yeah. And then having to come to that realization that that's only going to be found within. Mm-hmm. It's only going to be found within, and how you have to be okay with who you are and how you show up, because the world will beat you up and they will take a lot from you if you get whatever you want to give them.
Yep.
Right. And so, and I think that's just growth. I think it's maturity. I think it's giving too much away too many times and realizing that's not sustainable. And it leads me personally to a place of resentment that I don't like.
Oh yeah.
And so, and I'm like, finally, then you have to look at yourself and you're like, you're the one doing it.
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah.
So you can be upset with them and what they're taking, but it's all goes back to you and the choices you're making and how much you are allowing and giving your power away to that person. So then it shifts right back to feeling very like, well, then now I'm empowered. If it's all about me, I can control that. I can change that. I can make different decisions. And that's been a hard walk for me personally, is how to do that. And I'm not saying I'm there. Some days I can, but I'm more aware.
Yeah.
I can catch myself doing it now way quicker than in the past. And I think that awareness, like going back to the emotional intelligence, then leads to the regulation.
That's right.
Then leads to having more of the motivation and being empathetic with myself I won't go months of feeling that way, but maybe I can stop it in days.
Yeah.
And so, but that's been a huge, I mean, still that is my growth is boundaries and understanding. And not just with my time, but just with my emotions, just with my heart, just with my energy of not giving that away, and letting people walk their walk.
That's right.
Letting people be in pain.
That's right. That's
letting them do it and not trying to like hold on and go rescue or like what can I do to help make your pain diminish? Right. But that's yours, and I can sit with you. I can honor your pain without it then causing my own pain.
That's right. My gift to you is my presence and your pain.
That's right.
But
you don't need my presence to turn into pain.
No.
Actually, it diminishes their pain.
Yeah.
Because now it's my pain. Well, now, that's not fair.
How'd you make it about you all of a sudden? Right? It's like, hey, and we've all been in that place where it's like, I am so sorry. I can't believe this. It's just like, Stop. For God's sake. This is my ish. I got to take care of this.
That's what people need is they need your presence. Not your pain.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Brian Delaney with Unlock Potential. I want to invite you to join our Patreon, where we release to you exclusive content so that you can get to the next level of your life and have the tools necessary to build the life of your dreams, have the relationships that you desire, and truly be a part of a community of people who not only desire growth, but are making it happen now. We'll see you there.
So when you're working with people in your role, when you're helping them to navigate, because that's part of your position, is you help them navigate back to good regulation, right? Back to, and that was an important distinction that I learned a while ago. I had a really good therapist who said, hey, for this week, your work is not to fix it, it's just to notice it.
That's right.
And that was really helpful because I stopped fixing things altogether, because I was like, because noticing became such a power tool for me.
So powerful.
And it was like, because my subconscious just goes to work on it when I'm not putting pressure on it.
Yes.
It's like, oh, that's there. He said, say, oh, that's there, and move on. And that was such a gift to me to be able to become a better noticer. Yeah. And
it takes you out of reaction to response.
It's so big. You work with people most of the time who are not in that space of like having a lot of bandwidth for noticing. They're in a space where they are in this very reactionary, sometimes justifiably, unjustifiably hurt place. What is your mindset like when you're entering into those situations at your best?
I think a lot of just what we talked about is just really just allowing people that space, but also I don't know, Brian, that's a good one. I've done a lot of work and research and understanding and certifications around trauma, and just really understanding trauma, understanding people. We all have our own resiliency zones.
Yeah.
And allowing people tools of how they can reset themselves. When we get thrown out of our resiliency zones, we can go really high or we can go really low. But how can you sit with someone and help them kind of offer tools or thoughts or just presence of how they can kind of reset their own nervous system to get back in their resiliency zone, because but that's hard work. That's hard to do. I don't know if I have any hacks. Again, I think it always just goes back to presence and to awareness. Asking what support looks like for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know a lot of times I'll walk into it with an agenda, and that's what screws me up. It's like I have a predefined outcome that I want without knowing the full set of circumstances. And I think that for me is one of the toughest things to eliminate. Is just getting rid of the agenda, because the agenda I'm walking in with has everything to do with my hopes, dreams, wants, desires, everything like that for the outcome and how I feel like it's going to work out best for everybody. But it doesn't really lend itself for me to listen well, you know?
Yeah. And I think we were doing a book once, and it was just around this, so just being in the moment, just the mindfulness work of just, not trying to be attached to the outcome. It's like, it's the work of life, right?
100%.
And I remember Woods was little, our youngest was little, and he was in the back seat screaming his head off, and you're just like, it was like a long trip. And this is the book I was reading, and I was like, Brandon, it's the thought that you don't want him screaming right now that's causing so much suffering. And he was like, that is bullshit. He is screaming his head off, and I'm miserable. And if he would just stop screaming his head off, I wouldn't be miserable. But going back to that is so freeing. It's the thought that I shouldn't be experiencing what I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Is causing my suffering.
That's right.
Because we can handle, if we're in the moment and we're present, we've been able to handle everything that's been thrown our way.
Yeah.
But it's the thoughts and the trying to almost, control it that causes so much pain. And again, I'm definitely not there. I'm just saying. But it goes back to being unattached. I think life boils down to that. And I think life boils down to how do you do grief work well?
Yeah.
I think grief is, I think that's where it comes down to.
I was told the two most common experiences for people like us in this life, the two most common emotions that we're going to experience are grief and joy.
It's true.
And I think they're intimately attached, but I don't know about in your life. In my life, I was not given a framework, nor were my parents given a framework to talk about death, grief, joy. It was like, yeah, that's kind of great. Like one of the maybe worst things you could say, kind of great. Yeah. It couldn't just be great. It couldn't just be, this is amazing. Because it's and I think people walk around with senses of impending doom because they've never experienced what true joy feels like. They've never just let themselves into that space, and they didn't feel like they deserved to really grieve in the way that they needed to. They didn't get into that deep work. And I think giving ourselves permission to not get into that deep work creates a bitterness that you were talking about earlier when other people put their stuff on you. It's listen, I didn't get the opportunity to feel sad, bad, mad, all that stuff. I didn't get that opportunity. So you don't get that opportunity. Nobody gets that opportunity.
And I think that's one of the detriments of our society is we tell people they shouldn't grieve, or we give them many ways to numb it.
Okay.
And I think when you numb grief, you numb joy. Yeah. You can't just numb one emotion.
Oh yeah.
You're numbing it all.
Yep.
And so I think the intensity of feeling our emotions is such a breakthrough to living a life of fullness.
Yeah.
And so, but I think grief work, because we're always attached to something. And when it doesn't work out, there's grief, right? Because we're grieving the thought of what we thought our life would be, or we're grieving the idea of what we do. And so doing that work, I think, is the key.
Yeah, I didn't ever have a vision board that included my son pitching a spoon across a restaurant 45 minutes in, knowing we shouldn't have done this. I'm tired. He's tired.
Right. Like, we're paying for this experience right now at this restaurant. Like, am I paying for this?
I am about to lose my shit. Can somebody just let me, just that whole thing. And I think there is a level of embarrassment, a lack of normalcy around that. And I think for a lot of that is about preparation. It's like, for me, I know I tend to get angry easier when I haven't taken care of myself around the sleep department.
Sleep.
And that creates an environment for me where I start to the amount of ground that I can give my son or my stepdaughter, the amount of ground that I can give up to them to allow them to experience their emotions in a safe environment. And I think this is just a generational thing at this point.
Yeah.
It's a moment of assumption that individual families are either going to break or not, and that's going to change society. But society, I don't think will lead that change. I think it's the individuals and being able to share that with each other and being able to, as a community, say, hey, I see where you are. I can help you with that.
Yeah.
Here's a great book, because I've had to read a lot of great books to deal with my own issues, so I didn't give them as a trauma to my son.
Yeah, we just pass it down. What we don't heal just passes down, right?
That's right.
But that's what I love about what I hope we're creating with Ripple is just an environment that, it's just, if we aren't taking care of ourselves, we have to change the perception that it's from selfish to the most selfless thing you can do to take care of yourself. And truly, like, what does it mean to get good sleep? What does it mean to get good exercise? It's just like, how can we change that perception of people that want to be highly successful, highly driven, that you do that through taking care of yourself, to trying to balance out what that means for you. So you create an environment internally that can get to that space. And I don't think we've always been taught that.
Yeah. I know I've had to reach out for that, because that wasn't something that other people were given. I also understand, just because I wasn't given it does not give me the right to shirk my responsibility to do it.
That's right.
It freaking does not, because I was not born into this society to not play an active role in building it. In like, none of us, like, we all have to do it. If you're looking around and saying society sucks, well, were you part of us getting here? like
That's right.
I think the 30-day-old infants are the only ones who are off the hook on
That's
that.
right. That's so right. That's so good. Yeah.
But when inside of those moments where we are looking for better ways of communicating than maybe we were given, what are some of those things that you've been able to do? Because I get to be, or I get to be around your people, these people that you've raised, and they're cool people.
They're such cool people.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate. I admire my son. Like, that's super cool. I admire my stepdaughter. They're really cool people.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are some of the things that you're doing and you've done to learn how to communicate on a level that is commensurate, that's the same as you want them to be able to communicate?
That's good. I mean, again, I have to go back to just the foundation of what my parents offered me.
Okay.
And build from that space.
Yeah.
And so my parents, they were always very clear that our relationship comes first.
Yeah.
And I think so many times people that are in couple relationships that are raising kids, I think that can get confusing, that maybe the kids should come first and then the relationship comes second, where I always knew I was first because they did put them first. Like, it was like, it was this weird, I can't even quite put it in words.
No, I get it. That's it. Yeah.
But it created for me a sense of safety. Because, and again, it's not that every relationship should work out. It's not what I believe, or everything should, but because they put their relationship first, I felt a safe place that I wasn't responsible for them. They were responsible for them.
You didn't have to be the adult.
I didn't have to be the adult.
Yeah.
And so,
They were both great communicators. I think communication is, golly,
Yeah.
we could do a whole podcast on like the key to communication and how hard it is.
Part two.
Yeah, I mean, because we're all looking through the 1,000 lenses I'm looking through where I feel like I'm communicating, but just the words we use, just the tone in which we use it. So with my children, with Brandon, I mean, we try to do it, but we really try to own it when we blow it.
Yeah.
We really just like, it's
So big.
I mean, even when the kids were little, I'm like, it's 8:00. Like, I have to go to bed now because I'm going to do or say something that I'm going to have to then wake up and apologize for. Like, I have nothing left. So I've got to put myself to bed now. Like, I've got to, again, that regulation. But I think too, like letting your kids and again, this is again, like, listen to them. They come in with just who they are.
Yeah.
And our biggest thing is not to get in their way.
Yeah.
But how do I listen to who they are? How do I see them for how they're wired?
Yeah.
How do I create an environment that helps them grow into being their individual selves, not somebody, Brandon and I, just mini-me's of us.
Yeah.
They're very much their own people. And helping them recognize their superpowers.
Yeah. So cool.
Tell them, like, you killed it really here. I think we always are giving feedback sometimes when they're not doing what we think they should do or thing, but to really say, like, I noticed you today.
Yeah.
And that worked really well. I encourage them when we go to school, tell me when we get home about something that you notice someone doing something kind today.
Oh, wow. That's
Help
great.
them start to notice outside their own selves.
Yeah.
What other people are doing that are breeding kindness. So little things like that, we would go to school and I haven't got to drive them to school the last couple of years. I'm about to get back in the car, Delaney. I'm going to be back driving kids to school. But
sorry.
just those little conversations of again, they might do it, they might not, but just planting little seeds and helping them. Again, I think it goes to just, my kids are incredibly privileged. Mm-hmm. And I don't want them to feel bad about that.
Yeah.
I don't want that. There doesn't mean guilt in that.
No, there isn't.
But there needs to be a responsibility and an opportunity in that.
Yep.
And let them see, and it doesn't mean I need to tell them where that stands, or I don't need it, but how can they understand what is it that they feel passionate about? Where do they see they can make a difference? And then help have conversations or provide opportunities for that. And I'm not saying I do a great job with that, but always, but that I think is key for all of us.
Yeah.
Not just kids, but helping people, like, where do you feel like you can make your community a little stronger?
Yep.
And so
that's such a big piece, because I have experienced myself through growing multiple businesses, through working jobs, through being wealthy, for being poor, for being in the middle. I've been all across the board. And one of the things that I realized was that the work that I'm doing at work is because it's always been people work. Whether I was swinging a hammer, whether I was selling insurance, whether I was working in restaurants, whether so many different things that I had to do over the years, it was always people work. Yeah. Because the work itself didn't speak for itself. Mm-hmm. And so being able to speak toward the work that we're doing is powerful. But I saw where I was a hero at work in that way and a zero at home, where I wasn't teaching those lessons. I wasn't creating those same outcomes that I was trying to create for people at work. I wasn't intentional about creating those things at home. But what I did was I had to work with the outcomes of a lot of people not doing that work at home. When I was working and leading people, I was like, why do you constantly need me to tell you you're doing a good job? Where is that in here? Yeah. Where is that in here? Yeah. And because it was never in here, and they never worked to put it in here, they never could say it out here. And so, of course, they needed to be a receiver of that message because they were so desperate for it. They just never got it. They're overcompensating.
Yes.
And then at home, I was doing things like I was telling my son, good job, right? Good job. And he'd be motivated by that. Mm-hmm. And his mom said, how do you feel about what you just did? Mm-hmm. And he would have to think. Mm-hmm. And he would, well, I feel pretty good about what I did. And so I learned that. I stopped telling him how I thought he was doing. I started asking him first. I was like, how do you feel like that game went? And I'm over here, I'm like, you shouldn't have made that mistake. If you would have worked a little harder and picked a few less flowers, you would have been like, shut up. Like, the only thing you need to do in leadership for your son right now is shut up. And
God, it's so good because we will out and I mean, classic Meredith Ellison is over talking, and over explaining instead of just listening and letting them. And again, they'll tell you something they're proud of, and you're like, or if they need to work on, and you're like, wait, have you thought about that? Have you thought about that you really need to work on? I think you need to work on that.
Well, the reason I was asking you this question was so I could give a little bit more input. So I'm glad you gave me that crappy ass answer. So I could, it's like all these games that we play and listen, when we play those games, I just found that nobody wins and nobody actually becomes that healthy individual who can feel a certain way, even when the noise around them, they still get the signal of like, hey, I'm proud of myself. Yeah. I did the right thing. Because there's how many times in your life have there been a lot of people telling you to do one thing, but the other thing was the right thing to do?
That's right.
And if it wasn't, that's a developed thing. People think, oh, well, I have to do the right thing for the most people. That is a great way to end up in a terrible situation that's been repeated throughout history, time and time again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
For you, if you seem to be very passionate, and it's obvious through the work you do, you seem to be very passionate about people and people finding their power, not giving that power away, being able to look inside, discover who they are, and live more complete and fulfilled lives. Mm-hmm. Why is that so damn important to you? Why don't you just like, I sometimes I look at people and I'm like, I know the answer now because I've gotten closer to that. I get to look over your shoulders and learn. I'm like, it's crazy. Like having my older brother. I've gotten to watch. He's been such a gift to me my whole life because he's a 3-year ahead crystal ball for me. I look over his shoulder. I'm like, I look over his shoulder. I'm like, oh, that's how you do that. That's the way you do that. And so I've gotten to watch over your shoulder, and I think the idea of this, a lot of people would think it's like, oh, when I get to a certain position, I'm good. I'm just going to take. But it seems like as you get to that position, you've been more inspired to give that message and to set people free in that way, to really be able to unleash their heart and to bring their heart, hands, and feet to this world in very real ways. Why is that so important to you?
For me, again, it goes back to that gives me hope and it gives me optimism in the world we live in. I think the more people that are living from their authentic space, that heals the world. Yeah. One person at a time. And so because any issue we're dealing with in our communities, in our world, is coming from a place of pain or a place of trauma that hasn't been healed. But people at their center and at their heart are good, and we're whole. And that's the more people can wake up to their wholeness and their power, the cooler it is going to be to live here. And I think that's what will sustain us. That is what will sustain us is wholeness. All this other stuff, it's just a game. Yeah, it's made up. We've made it up. Yeah. We've made it all up. And then we're allowing it to control us. But when people truly dig deep and live from their truth, that's how we start to heal.
That's great. That's great. You're just cleaning up your neighborhood.
I gotta live next to these people.
Listen, have you met some of them? Some of them are great. Others, I've been one of the not so great neighbors before.
We all have. We all have. So, but I get passionate about it. I have a lot of hope in that. Yeah. I have a lot of hope in people.
Yeah.
I really do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank you for the main portion of this. I'm going to ask you to hold on for the Patreon. Okay. There are a couple of things that we're going to do for our subscribers before we do this for our supporters. What I want to do is I want to ask you very specifically one tool for emotional regulation in intense moments, and then one tool for being able to heal divides in the midst of the most important relationships. Just one tool that you've used to be able to bridge that divide. And I know you weren't ready in your processor around that. So I'm going to ask you to come out of your comfort zone, come visit me in unprepared land.
Okay.
We're improvising. That's life, right? So, but want to mine that for you. But for the rest of the community who's not subscribed yet, I just want to thank you for your time and thank you for your
asking me to be here.
Yeah, and your leadership over the years, your example over the years. It's cool to be able to watch, whether it's you and Brandon, and be able to look at different parts of life and be like, marriage, they got that. It's dialed. It's pretty cool because it's not perfect. It's just real. And the parenting piece and the business piece. And as you get higher up, as I get higher up, it's easier to be more aware of the nuance that is a relationship that does exist in people, and to only be able to count people in for part of what they do well. But both of you have been phenomenal examples to me in my life to be able to watch. So just want to thank you for that. And
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
Thanks again for joining us for this conversation. Head right over to our Patreon for exclusive content, including more from our conversation today. Thank you all for joining our conversations. We're developing this platform for simple, profound tools and techniques that can help you get the best out of your life and, more importantly, unlock potential. You can find me across all social platforms at The Brian Delaney, and online, come visit us at thebriandelaney.com.